Technology, right? Technology. So we made it back. Hello, my friend.
Hello.
Hello. So let's go to Peter because Peter's been waiting for a really long time. Peter's been waiting for like 40 minutes now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, that's yeah. All right. Hi. No. Yeah. Oh, yeah, give him the microphone. Yeah.
All right. Hello, Peter.
Hi Neil, I'm Peter. And a couple of couple of softball questions. One softball. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Over the course of Sandman, you created some wonderful characters. I was wondering about the origins of a couple of them, the Dead Boy Detectives and Hobgatling. Could you talk about where they came from?
Sure. Hobgatling was an idea, or at least the idea of that story was, I think, probably the first ever idea I had that I knew was going to be a real story one day. Just the idea of two people meeting in a pub every 100 years. And I went, that feels like a story. When I came to create him, I think there were a bunch of things that were incredibly useful. One of which was having Michael Zulli. And Michael was a fantastic, he's a fantastic artist, but he's also, because he'd started out as a wildlife artist, and things like Puma Blues showed this amazing eye, I thought, well, he'd be really good for doing historical stuff. And it always used to irritate me that a lot of historical comics would be off. They'd be set in a mysterious period known as the past, and but they weren't actually set in a real time. And I knew that if the story of every 100 years was going to work, I needed somebody who was very precise and could actually show me a visual, a 1289 that wasn't a 1389, and a 1489 that wasn't a 1589. And you had to be able to see people's clothes and their environments change. And I remember suggesting to him that Bob Hoskins, the English actor Bob Hoskins, might be a good physical model to bear in mind for Hob. Somebody, small, just sort of cheerful. In my head, he had, a sort of Cockney-ish accent, and I let him go from there. The Dead Boy Detectives, how did they start? They began in Sandman. At Sandman, I think it was 24.
25.
25?
No, it was 25. Right. That's the one that Matt draw.
You're right. It was 25. 24 was the 23 was Lucifer, which was 24 was the coming back after Lucifer. 25 was the first Charles Rowland, and Matt Wagner drew it. And I remember it was the only Sandman script that I ever rushed. And the last 4 or 5 pages were terrible. In order to go to a convention, I had to fly to America to go to a convention. And when I got back, I reread the script. I went, this is great, and then you can actually see where I bash it all out in a night in order to get a plane. And I wrote a different ending. And I don't even know if somewhere, Matt Wagner hadn't got to that part yet. So it was just like, okay, Matt, ignore. So somewhere out there in the world is the first draft. And it ended, I remember it ended differently. I don't think it ended in the same way. And it definitely didn't end with them heading out into the world. But the second draft did. And then I used to think about them because they never felt like they were going to come back in Sandman. And I thought, well, if you've got two schoolboys, one of whom died in 1990 and one of whom died in whatever it was, 1916, what would they do? Well, obviously they would open up a detective agency.
Obviously.
It seemed the only possible alternative. So then when I got to do Children's Crusade, I created their little detective agency. And they're fun because they've never been, in the giant list of spin-off characters who have gone huge, they're not on it. They are just sort of, they sit there off in the corner. But what's lovely is that there are always enough people who have such fondness for them that sooner or later somebody comes along and says, let's do something with your Dead Boy Detectives. And I always go, wonderful, go do something fun.
I'm so sorry, Neil, that I'm like giving you the laughter back trap of that. Because, yeah, right, no, because, like, dead boys from 1915 are not a character that anyone cares about. I mean, agreed, yeah. Yeah, and I love you, but no, not. All right, so thank you, Peter, for that question. Let's go to Kelly.
5 years from now, when the Dead Boy Detectives...
Yeah, exactly. They'll be like, him, shut up, you're wrong. Yeah.
This clip will go viral.
Yeah, it will, and I'm all for that. I'm all for the viral. So Kelly Senden asks, and actually I like this question because it's like a complex question. In the last couple of years, Kelly Senden asks, I've seen 2 local dance productions that were adapted from your work. Sharpen Fine's Queen of the Knives at Z-Space, or were inspired by your artistic process, Amy Stewart's Broken Open at Smoon Ballet. I found both to be pleasurable to watch and delightfully deviant from normal form. I'm wondering how you feel about how your work is interpreted in dance and movement, and whether you're aware of other dance productions, or if you're actually working on any other collaborations.
What I love about this is...
You'd never get this question any other place.
I'd never get this question any other place. And also, of course, I love the fact that some of my stuff actually does get turned into dance. And one of the reasons I do that is because I personally never turned into dance. I was, any ability to move gracefully and not to tread on the foot of the person that I'm dancing. For me, as far as I'm concerned, dancing hit its peak in 1977 with the invention of the pogo. Jumped up and down and has been going down since then with things more complicated. I feel like, no, they finally got it right. Having said that, that is my personal dance experience. What I love is watching people like Megan Kurashiga, who did the Queen of Knives adaptation of Sharpen Fine, watching the dancers who have got the right to do stuff from me, some of the Smoke and Mirrors short stories. At one point there was a ballet troupe in touch with DC Comix about doing a Black Orchid ballet, which I thought would have been amazing. And I think at the time, DC's licensing department just went,
what?
We are scared. This is weird. This does not compute. And we know how to license other things, but ballet is just too weird. Yeah. And it never happened. But I would have loved to have gone and seen a Black Orchid ballet. I thought, I thought that's frankly, the lack of Black Orchid is probably why I haven't been to the ballet.
All right, let's.
I love the fact that, especially in the Bay Area, You got dancers, and they like my stuff, and they make cool shit out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's switch to another person who's here live in person, and we'll hand the microphone over to them so you can actually hear them.
Thank you.
Say your name, too.
Hi Neil, my name is Phil. I met you once before at a very small book signing of Coraline in Dublin, so it's a pleasure to be speaking to you directly.
It's lovely to meet you.
So has Morpheus been laid to rest for good, or maybe hope that he'll awake again?
I don't have another big Morpheus story sitting in the way that I did with Sandman Overture, where all of the hooks, all of the holes, all of the places that Sandman Overture slotted in were being built while I built Sandman. So, you know, you can... I loved the idea when I was writing Sandman that one day people would get Sandman Overture and then they would come back and different panels would mean different things. And I kind of hope now that people will read Sandman Overture who have already read Sandman and then sit down and read the whole of Sandman again and go, some of these things have moved around. Some of these things mean different things. Some of these things, oh my God, that was a panel, I thought it was just, I just thought it was a random panel, but actually it refers to something. And so I was very much hoping that that would happen. And I don't have another one of those. Having said that, there are several stories that I talked about doing with Dave McKean back in the Dark Ages, which have never been told. There are still a handful of Sandman stories that, that questions that have not been answered and things that there are still to tell. So and mostly the joy for me was going and doing Sandman Overture and discovering that the characters were still there in my head, and they still sounded like themselves, and they still were them. And it's like, okay, well, that is good to know. If we get to Sandman's 40th anniversary or Sandman's 50th anniversary, I'm quite sure that Morpheus may come out and do some things. Definitely the story. I felt like Sandman Overture was the last piece for me of Sandman. Of the big Sandman story that started with Sandman 1 and then goes into Sandman Endless Nights. And once you get to Endless Nights, you have basically a lot of the pieces on the table. And then you can get Overture. But maybe one day.
maybe. I like it. So let's jump into the next person in line. Yeah. So. Oh, and they've got a puppy too. Beautiful puppy. That's a beautiful puppy. Put that puppy on the camera. No, seriously. Let's get that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that face. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
What a face.
Hi.
Hi. What's your name?
Oh, my name is Sophia. I'm still in high school, and I don't really read comics. Or I never really read comics until I read yours, because your mind is really quite beautiful. Just want to appreciate that really quick. My question, I'm not sure. I haven't read all of them, so I hope this hasn't been answered, but people said it's a good question. So I want to know why Delight turned into Delirium.
Oh,
it's definitely a good question. It is an excellent question.
Really?
One of the fun things about Sandman for me is there are questions which, if ever I answer them properly, it will be in the shape of a story. And that one will be a story one day. Originally, I planned to do that story.
Yeah. Listen to that audience reaction too. That's actually a pretty intense audience reaction.
Good. Once long ago, I planned to do it with Jill Thompson, and still would probably do it with Jill. My only hesitation these days is that Todd Klein, who is one of the world's most brilliant letterers, possibly the best in the world, and who has lettered all of Sandman, has now managed to take everything in Sandman over to the computer, except for Delirium.
Huh.
Delirium he has to hand letter, and he can't, and then scan it in because there's no other way to do it. He created Delirium's lettering style was created by Todd so brilliantly that he couldn't do it as a thing on a computer. And Todd has grumbled that he doesn't really. I think he would be very sad if I were to say, Todd, we're going to do a Delirium miniseries next, because it would mean going back to hand lettering after all the gloriously computerized years. Either that or coming up with, the amazing Delirium font.
So do you? There was a time that, like, you didn't know who the Seven were.
Yep.
And I sent you a drawing of Delight.
You did, and I said, good.
Do you remember that? But so here's the thing, and so this is the thing I'm going to confess after all these years. I actually traced that. I actually traced that from a Milo Manara drawing.
I'd long since I never assumed that you didn't.
Yeah. No, as you should. So you're smarter than I am, and I tried to do this thing, and I thank you.
It was beautiful. And
yeah, it was, but it was not mine. It wasn't mine. Yeah.
What I loved about those.
But I feel as though that I actually put you on a path.
It absolutely was, and it was a lovely thing because at that point I had Delirium, and you were disappointed.
Yeah.
And you were like, "It should be Delight. Look, here is this drawing I have done of her." And I said,
and it wasn't my drawing. It wasn't my drawing, but I was like, "This is not how it's supposed to be. Fix this, please, you." And you did, and that's because you're great.
But what was fun about those days, the best thing about those days, was because it was so incredibly pre-internet. Yeah. When people would ask me questions, I'd answer them.
Yeah.
And so Brian, for the first, probably for the first 3 or 4 years of Sandman, people at signings, they'd say, well, who is the missing brother? I'd say, oh, it's Destruction. And they'd go, oh, okay. And you tell them that, secure in the knowledge that it was fine to have told 5 people in a signing line because 100,000 people wouldn't know.
Yeah. No, wait. Let's do this other thing. Can Jordan? Can you point the camera there up? Can you? No, the wrong other direction. That way. Point it that way. Point to this thing up here, because this is actually kind of cool. This is before Mike Dringenberg. This is a Mike Dringenberg drawing before Destruction was actually. Yeah, almost. Yeah. So you see the number 2 there in the line. So you see Desire, and then there's a picture of Destruction is the number 2, and that's me that Mike Dringenberg drew as Destruction. But this was before Destruction was ever a thing, and yeah. I'm sorry. I totally took that over, and that was bullshit. Sorry. I'm totally sorry. Go back to Neil, and then let's go to the next person in line. And thank you for your question. And that was an awesome question. That was awesome. Yes. All right. And wait, no, we have a middle schooler now. Yes, middle schooler. Yeah, middle schooler. What do you got to say?
Hello, And I got a question. Did some of your inspiration for the Sandman come from your own dreams?
Yes, but not as much as you would think. Um, because mostly dream logic isn't story logic. So I would steal ideas. I would steal scenes. I would wake up from terrible nightmares. And instead of going, oh my God, I just had a terrible nightmare, I would wake up going, that was brilliant. I can use that. And some of the coolest, weirdest little bits. I remember in Game of You, Hazel's dead baby was a nightmare that I had. I woke up from this dream where I'd been handed this baby with autopsy scars all over it that then started trying to bite me. And I went, okay, I'm using you. And there are chunks of other bits, but they're only normally ever panels, or sometimes they're actually dream sequences in themselves. The strangest that it ever got, I had flu, and I was writing Sandman 74, the J. Muth issue, the Chinese desert one, and I was writing it, and I wasn't sure what happened next, and I fell asleep with flu, and dreamed this sort of weird little dream where he got a bridge out of one of those claw machines, and there was a weird laughing sailor in it. I woke up and I just wrote that all down, and that was the next thing that happened, because I needed a strange dream and I'd just been given one.
Wow. So thank you very much for your question, by the way. That was a great question. So I have like 20 questions here, and we're never going to get to all of them. So let's try to edit here.
I'll try and do short, interesting, snappy, relevant answers rather than the long, wandering diversions.
People ask questions. I don't want to say like your question's not good enough. So we have from Gretchen. Actually, I kind of like this one. Do you find that the travel and live events you've done in the past again. Do you find the travel and the live events that you've been doing more of in the past few years lends you towards certain kind of writing of things over than others? Comics and short stories versus books and other long form stuff. So it's what's your interaction with wow, the camera zoomed right in, I just noticed. Your interaction with the audience, has it changed how you approach stories?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But it is also true that I'm planning. This is basically the last thing that I'm doing before I go off to become a novelist. And I'm now done for a year or 18 months with live events.
I'm so sorry.
With all sorts of things, because they definitely act as a distraction.
Yeah.
So I don't know that they change the way that I write. I don't know that I write more short stories and so on and so forth. But I do know that all distractions make it harder to be a novelist. And I'm not a very good disciplined novelist. So in order to be a good disciplined novelist, I'm going to have to do what I tend to do when I write a novel, which is say no to everything else.
So actually, this is an interesting question. Are you, in terms of like being a novelist versus being a person who's telling a story in the moment? That's not the right way to put it. Because for me, as a person who sells comics as a living, I'm much more interested in the immediate thing that creative juices make, right? Does that make sense? I'm like totally. I've drank a little too much. I'm sorry, that I'm not stating this in the right way, but like, I feel as though comics do a thing that novels don't. That it's immediate. That it's a thing that you're engaged in, and that you're moving forward. That novels are people telling you a slower story. Does that make sense? I didn't make that?
I mean, I think it can be true. It's definitely true that in terms of the instant gratification, there is something rather wonderful about writing a story and having it out on the stands 3 months later, or 2 months later, or 6 months later, or whatever, as opposed to a novel, which is going to be a year away. On the other hand, it's also really good to be able to think about one thing without needing to put ups and downs, without needing to. You always want people to turn the pages, but you don't need to insert climaxes. You don't have to, think about the way that things work. When I was doing The Kindly One, that was the very first time that while doing Sandman, I didn't try in any way to subtly remind people during the first 3 pages of what had happened a month ago. And the
right, but I guess that's maybe my question. So, as an author, like, is there a value in doing a Doll's House versus doing a Kindly Ones?
Sure. I've never been one to privilege one form of art over another. But by the same token, comics are wonderful. Monthly comics are wonderful.
Yeah.
Writing huge, giant, it would have been really fun to have gone away and written the whole of Sandman Overture and had JHW3 draw it, and then to have come out of nowhere with it. That would have been fun too. Would it have been different? Probably, yeah. Because the pacing would have changed if I was writing a 150-page story as opposed to writing a bunch of 24-page stories.
Right.
But I don't think one is better than the other. I just think they're different. And what I love is being alive and allowed to do everything. So I love the fact that I'm allowed to write shorter things and go out and do lots of public events and bop around and do that kind of stuff. And by the same token, I love the fact that I'm allowed to say fuck off to everybody who wants me to come and talk at their university or go and do funny events, and I hide out and write a novel. I love both of these things.
Yeah. Well, you're allowed to do whatever you want to because you're your own creative person. It's not. No one owes you anything.
No.
You know that. Of course they don't. So we have a question from here in the audience, and let's ask that question.
Hi, my name is Ryan. I was wondering, earlier you said there's a lot of, this is kind of a golden age for comics. I was wondering if there's any particular artists or writers that really stand out to you.
I think one of the reasons why we're in a golden age right now is we have loads of glorious and strange artists and writers out there. Let me point to a few who get overlooked, and a few who may not. Eddie Campbell, after all of these years, is as good as he ever was, has always been flying under the radar except in From Hell. And I just want to, I love getting to point people to Eddie Campbell's work, to his great big book, The Years Have Pants, and to any of the comics Eddie does. Tom Gold. I may not be pronouncing his name right. Gould?
Gould.
Gould? G-A-U-L-D.
Gaiman.
Listen, that's why I ask. His stuff is glorious. I think his comic Goliath was absolutely fascinating to me because it was heartbreaking, beautifully written, with these tiny, um, faintly comical characters. Just glorious. Um, and beyond that, I think it will probably be invidious to start singling people out and going, these people are brilliant, but there are an awful lot of brilliant writers out there. Kelly Sue DeConnick, I love Kelly Sue's work. And Willow, these guys who are just doing these mainstream comics and doing them so gloriously well. As I say, you could take a deep breath and start going. So.
No, we're in a golden age of comics right now. It's obvious that there's so much amazing creative stuff out there. You like, to begin to name names is ridiculous in a way. Do we have one more? You don't have a question? No? Yeah, please step up. Step up. Do it.
Hello. Hello, Neil. My name's Drew.
Hi, Drew.
Hi. I didn't really have a question. I just very rarely get a chance to thank someone who has created such amazing things. I love Sandman. I love The Graveyard Book. I love the Anansi Boys, Coraline. You've made a lot of fantastic just pieces of fiction, and I wanted to take the chance to say thank you for being born, I guess. Just that was a good decision. Thank you for that.
Whenever I sit around and think, should I have been born? Was that a mistake? I will remember this moment. You are so welcome. Thank you so much.
That's it? No, thank you so much. All right, so we have one more. There's another question here. Go. Do ask the question.
Hi, my name is Scott. I guess I look there. My question is kind of a meta question. In your mind, is there some kind of over universe, like Terry Pratchett had Discworld? Are the Endless present in American Gods and in Coraline, or is it just every single one of these is its own little bubble universe inside of your head?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I kind of think of them as they're all different bubble universes, but they share a parking lot. So it's like there are characters in American Gods who obviously could not be Delirium or Death, because DC Comics owns Delirium and Death, and I own all of the characters in American Gods. So obviously these characters could not possibly be them. By the same token, the Lucifer in Murder Mysteries, my short story, is not the Lucifer of Lucifer. But they definitely are coming out of the same head and coming out of the same fingers. And by the same token, there are things that Neverwhere and Stardust and American Gods in particular have in common. That some of which I've never actually pointed out, and some of which I've done that thing that I sometimes do, which actually I did in Sandman, that I was talking about, where you build the holes that you will come along one day and attach the mechanism of Sandman Overture to. There are places in American Gods and Neverwhere and Stardust where if I ever get round to writing a particular novel, you will watch the way that they actually all definitely share a parking lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually have a customer who bought Overture as the first thing that he ever read as Sandman.
Did it make any sense to him?
Well, it did make sense to him. Yeah, no, it Tom, do you want to talk? No, come forward, Tom. Let's bring Tom forward because this is the first thing that he ever wrote. Yeah, do it.
I wrote Overture. No, I've been reading comic books since I was 6, but somehow Sandman has escaped me. I think something kind of turned me off from it initially. It seemed like a little too like 90s goth, like The Crow, and that's what initially pulled me away from it. But I really did enjoy Overture, and like as a prelude, I was like, am I not supposed to understand this, or is this some sort of like time and space like runs in a circle and it doesn't make sense, but it does make sense? And so
it's going to be really interesting because now you have to read the whole of Sandman.
Oh yeah.
And then when you've read the whole of Sandman, you have to go back and read Overture and go, that what was going on? Of course.
So it will make more sense if I read the other books. But
absolutely, it will. It makes complete sense, but it does presume that you've read all of the other books going into it. So it's kind of things which are not explained in the body of Sandman actually get explained in that. The giant mechanism at the end whereby the plot sorts itself out is actually not explained because it's assumed that somebody who read the whole of Sandman read Sandman 18, The Dream of a Thousand Cats, and went, I get what happened here and stuff. So
okay. But it does. I really did enjoy it as like its own piece because of its dream time, its space time. There's not really, a linear path to it. So it does make sense in that way.
I'm glad. As long as it makes sense, like a poem will make sense or a dream will make sense.
Yeah.
And I promise that it will make more sense when you come back to it.
Yeah, that as a dream, that was the metaphor I actually gave Tom when he asked me, how does this make sense? I'm like, it's a dream. It's all a dream. Dream is a dream. Yeah. So, thank you for being here and asking the questions and answering. We have no more questions, right? Like I'm done with it. Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having a book club. I think it's wonderful to have a graphic novel book club. And
what else are we gonna have? Like this is what it is, right? Like this is what we're supposed to be doing.
Exactly, and you're doing it very well, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you all for indulging me.
Indulging. Thank you very much, and I really hope that JH gets well soon, and that he like is not, yeah. He's a good man, and he should feel well. So, and thank you, Neil, and we'll talk soon. And he just quit.